Welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. And today's opinions will be about the Murderbot Diaries, Volume 2. This one includes Rogue Protocol and Exit Strategy. They're both by Martha Wells. And so yeah, I picked this up about 3 days ago, and for the first couple of days, I only allowed myself to read a page or two a night, not even a full chapter, because I knew what was going to happen. And sure enough, as soon as I gave myself permission to just read on, I read the entire 2 novellas in one sitting. Like, I read 300 pages in 4 hours, and like, I was supposed to be asleep. I needed to work the next day, but nope. I was reading the Murderbot Diaries. And like, I got to the end of Rogue Protocol, the end of a novella. Great place to stop. And I was just like, nah, I'm having emotions. I need to like read one more chapter, read into Exit Strategy, and then I was hooked and I read the entirety of Exit Strategy as well. So, yeah, these books are a little bit addictive to me for some reason. But these are the third and fourth of the Murderbot Diaries. So, yeah, as usual, when I'm talking about books that are sequels in a series, there will be some spoilers for the first 2, All Systems Red and Artificial Condition. A lot more for All Systems Red than Artificial Condition. But I will try my best to avoid direct spoilers, but if you have not read those books, maybe go read them and then come back to me. I also considered doing these reviews separately, a separate review for Rogue Protocol and for Exit Strategy, but because I read them all in one sitting, the feelings are all very intertwined, and I feel like if I tried to make 2 separate reviews for these, it would be very, very repetitive. So you are going to get it all. I'm going to try my best to be very vague about the stuff that happens in Rogue Protocol that affects, like, the feelings for Exit Strategy, so I apologize if things are a bit vaguer than usual. But this book picks up basically where the last one left off. We're still following our favorite rogue security unit as it travels throughout the universe. Rogue Protocol starts with Murderbot getting some news bursts that tell us its favorite humans are still dealing with the fallout from the first novella, All Systems Red. And there's this other system, planet, colony thing called Milieu that has come up in the news reporting. And the news reporters are saying that this other place, Milieu, might have something to do with Grey Chris, the evil corporation that is our continuing villain throughout this series. It seems Grey Chris had a terraforming project there that they abandoned, and Murderbot has the suspicion that they might have been doing more than just terraforming there. So it decides the best plan is to travel there, gather evidence in case this will help in the legal case against Grey Chris. But on the way, it will get tangled up in the lives of more humans and bots who desperately need a security unit to protect them. And thus, once again, ends up accidentally becoming a hero. Exit Strategy follows Murderbot having finished its mission on Milieu with some success, but it still needs to get the data back to Dr. Minsha and all the others. And when it's trying to figure out how to do that, it discovers that Minsha may be missing? The news bursts are a little bit unclear and contradictory. It seems there's nothing else to do but for Murderbot to go ahead and make the long trek back to Corporation space, one of the last places it would ever want to go, to find its friends and hopefully save them. But physically fighting for everyone's life may end up being easier than dealing with all those human emotions with no filter to protect it. And I know this is going to be an odd choice of where to start my opinions, but I'm going to start with the pronouns. Wells is doing something really, really interesting with these pronouns. So Murderbot uses it and its as his pronouns throughout the entire series. And this is the same pronouns that it uses for all robots and sentient computer systems. All bots are referred to as it. And that hasn't changed in these latter 2 novellas. Murderbot only uses other pronouns when it is basically in disguise as an augmented human, and then it will choose a random name and pronouns for that adventure, and it will choose different ones all the time. But I really started noticing an Exit Strategy, but it was one of those things that once I noticed it, thinking back, it was true going back a while. There are very few pronouns the further we get into the series. And I don't think this is just a quirk of how the story was written. I don't think it just happened to work out that Murderbot didn't need pronouns in these latter 2 books. I think Wells is actively making the choice to avoid the pronouns as a way of walking us through Murderbot's internal journey of beginning to think of itself less like a bot and more like a person. It's one of the main themes of the entire series so far. The line of what is human? How do we treat those who we are not perceiving as humans? And what makes something feel human? Like, a lot of the bots in this book, in this series, do sort of feel almost more human than some of the humans sometimes, and sometimes significantly less so. And it's the word it is undeniably a pronoun that we use for non-humans in our world. And it's very clearly established that in this world as well, it is the pronoun used for non-human sentient creatures. Because, like, there are other non-gendered pronouns here. Like, yeah, we do meet humans who go by other non-gender pronouns. And Murderbot specifically continues referring to it, thinking of itself as it. And the book is in first-person point of view. We are in Murderbot's head, which means it's Murderbot's choice to think of itself as an it. And so us seeing less moments of Murderbot thinking of itself as it is actively doing something to your perception of the bot. But also, we see Murderbot referring to itself as Murderbot less in the latter books. Like, Exit Strategy, I think the name only comes up, like, twice at most. And, a lot of the times Murderbot is either referring to itself by whatever alias it's going by, or just sec unit. And all of this is done really subtly and really well, and it's so clearly building us to that moment of Murderbot evaluating, is it more bot or is it more of a human? And that interplay, and it's a back and forth, and it's so fascinating. And I can tell you from experience, because I have written a story that I tried to disguise the gender of the protagonist for the first couple of chapters, and so I was trying to just avoid using pronouns for that protagonist, and oh my god, that is really hard. So I do think this is an absolute choice, and it is fabulous that it is so subtle and so interesting and so beautifully done. And building on that as well is the relationships. Because, yeah, all of these books really are built on Murderbot's relationship with a certain collection of other sentient beings, either people or robots. And, like, the relationship in the first one is Murderbot's relationship with all the Dr. Minch's crew and Dr. Mincha. And the second one is about its relationship with Art versus how its relationship with Tappan and the others feel. And the third is very much Rogue Protocol is about its relationship with Miki. And the thing is, to a certain extent, we all, as sentient beings, define ourselves by our relationship to those around us. Who are our friends? How we exhibit that friendship. How we treat them and how they treat us. But also, who are our enemies? How do we treat our enemies and how do our enemies treat us? And Murderbot is also defining itself by its relationships. Its desperate discomfort with being perceived by Dr. Mincha. Its comfortable antagonism with Art. Its almost bemusement of being treated as a human by Tappan. And its paternal annoyance at Miki all define this character and redefine it over and over and over again. And it's so beautiful. And what I love so much is that the character we meet on page 1 of All System Red is still in the character that we see here. It's just better defined. It's not like Murderbot is changing so much as finding out who it is when it's able to make its own choices. And that is such a fun journey to follow it on. And it's also just objectively, Murderbot is an incredibly fun character to follow. It is witty and judgy in the best ways. It's antagonistic, but caring so deeply. It's desperate to disengage, while also utterly incapable of ever, like, letting a fight pass it by. And it's one of those characters that will spend the entire novel telling the reader that it is a bad person, all the while doing the sweetest things you've ever heard of. Murderbot is so intelligent in a way that feels both very human and very not. Like, one of the things I love about this series, and one of the things I love about Martha Wells in general, is she is an absolute master of writing voices that feel human and other at the same time. And that is so cool! And, like, in this book, a lot of it is in the subtle ways that Murderbot and the other sentient robots, the computer systems, think in a certain level of precision that is not sort of natural to a lot of humans. So like, an example, there's a moment when Murderbot is passing through a busy section of a station, and it passes into a slightly less busy spot, and instead of using descriptions like, oh, there are less people here, everyone is spread out and quieter, I didn't bump into anyone, instead it goes, there is 60% less traffic here. And that's just enough to put the reader in the mind that we are in a computer while also feeling so innately human. And that is such an interesting line to walk. But that also brings me to the next point that I want to talk about, which is the action. The action in this series is so intensely interesting. A good bit of each of these books is about Murderbot hacking computer systems, and I think we should all probably remember the late 90s, early 2000s visualizations of hacking that were so on trend, where in movies and TV and, yeah, occasionally in books, we'd have characters where it's like a physical person or a camera trailing along like a row of towers built of numbers, and it's a like physically fighting antiviral systems, and it was all very Tron, it was all very ridiculous, it was all very animated, and none of it looked anything like what real hacking looked like. And like, that is coming from someone, yeah, I've never done hacking, but I know enough to know that hacking is usually like, I've set a computer system to go. And this book does a beautiful job of subverting that trope while also still keeping the action actiony and entertaining. Like, we do follow Murderbot into computer systems sometimes, but instead of it being like a physical place that we are walking around, it's almost always presented as more of Murderbot negotiating with and explaining to the computer systems what it wants done, and it's much more communicative and tricking, and it's very entertaining, and it also does not fall into, like, turning the computer systems into characters like in Reboot or anything like that. Does anybody remember Reboot? Is it just me for Reboot? If you have not watched Reboot, it is hilarious. But the important thing is it's also made very clear that a lot of this hacking is done as background processing for Murderbot, while Murderbot itself is like walking around or just standing awkwardly still in the middle of the action. And like, there is a moment that is the best moment ever of like, there's all these dramatic things going on that we know because we're reading the book. We know what's going on inside of Murderbot's head, but all the characters around it are just seeing Murderbot stand there perfectly still, and it was so beautiful. But also, there's this lovely, lovely, intense contrast of the almost friendly way the hacking is often portrayed and the action going on around it. Because in my opinion, Martha Wells makes the very correct decision of, instead of trying to make the actual hacking into action, we see the action of the results of the hacking happening around us. So like, we get a lot of things like drones and hoverbots flying around and causing chaos, while at the same time, what's going on behind the scenes is sort of just Murderbot befriending them. And I don't know, it's just such an odd type of action. And there are just so many of these scenes, and they are actually so different and interesting that each one feels as entertaining and fresh as the previous one. And just, it's one of those things that I would suggest if you are at all interested in writing internal and external action, read these novellas, because the balance here is so perfect that you almost don't notice that there is a balance between the internal and the external. And it's all building off of each other, and it's so well done. But other than that, I also love all the other minor characters in this book. In these books, Miki is insanely endearing, and part of the reason I had to keep going at the end of Rogue Protocol was because of the emotions at the end of that book relating to Miki, and I was just like, I can't, I need to read on, I need to decompress, I cannot sleep like this. But also, there's this weirdly deep but still exploratory relationship that Murderbot has with Rathi and Pinlin and Guartathan, where it knows them so insanely well, but in a very real way, they don't know it at all, and it's just so entertainingly weird. And like, there's a moment that I just had to stop and stare into the middle distance for a while. The moment when Murderbot and Dr. Minshew finally has a moment to actually like talk, and it's just, there's just so much. But also, there's a moment where Murderbot is talking about why its favorite media is Sanctuary Moon, and it was just one of those moments that's everything. It made me cry, it made me tear up, I was so into it, and in general in these books, there's just so much great shit about how media and stories affect us, what it means to feel seen, what it means to be not represented, how harmful bad reputation alters the perception and causes real harm around you, how the power of building relationships with fictional characters and understanding each other through the stories we tell about ourselves is so powerful, and all of it is so fascinating and so well done. But I also love the way the world, or in this case the universe, is expanding with each book. We started out with such a small, compact little world, with only hints of the greater world around us, and each novella introduces us to more and more and more and builds on it. And like in this one, these two that is, there's this slow revelation that the capitalist hellscape of constant data mining, profit over human life, and advertisement at the cost of safety and communication is just one section of space, and there are places where none of this is true, and that's just great. There's the use of entertainment to give us a backstory of how we got to this place where constructs made of human DNA mixed with robotics are an acceptable form of shock troops. That is a great way of introducing things, like the interplay of edutainment versus actual, like, real-life experience. That was so well done. And even the tiny little moments that we see of normal humans going about their lives that gives us such a clear contrast with the world Murderbot has always known. And it's so separate and so different from its world. Like, they are almost two different kinds of sci-fi. Murderbot's world is the industrial, practical, slightly dystopian sci-fi that you expect to be, like, all gray and dirty. And everyone else is living in this ethereal, artful, beautiful, floaty sci-fi that you expect to be portrayed with gorgeous CGI. And it's such an evocative delineation. But yeah, I don't know. I just really love this series so far, and objectively, I usually leave gaps between books and series. Like, I'll read one, set down the next one, read like maybe 3 or 4. There are some sequels waiting on my TBR list that I read the original book like years ago, and it's not that I'm not interested in reading the book too, it's just I like to leave a gap and wait for the right moment. And part of that is because growing up, you know, I had to wait till I could get to the library or Books A Million to get the next book. And quite often, because I was reading them from Books A Million, it would be until the next book was out, which might be years. But also, I never want to rush to an end too quickly, because a lot of books have endings, a lot of series have endings that just underwhelm me. So I tend to leave long gaps between reading books and series, but every now and then I'll hit that book that's like, the series is a little bit like crack, I can't put it down, I just gotta keep going. And this is one of them. And the interesting thing is, I'm not entirely sure I can define what makes a book like that for me versus what makes one a series that I love, but I'm gonna wait 3 or 4 books before I pick up the next one. And I do think part of it is the characters. A lot of it is, do I want to hang out with your characters 24/7? Then I'm probably going to pick up the next book immediately. But there is something more to it, and I'm not entirely sure what it is. Though one of the suggestions I got online, which may actually have a lot to do with it, is how quickly the action happens in real world. Like, I am far more likely to do this with books that everything happens in like 24 hours. That makes me more prone to pick up the next one, for whatever reason. But I know there's something else I cannot put my finger on, but whatever it is, the Murderbot Diaries definitely have it. I have already ordered the next one. I really want to read it right now. It's not here right now, and I'm having to read something else, and I had a lot of emotions about picking the next book to read, because I didn't want to pick something I would be too attached to, like something I would absolutely love, because I know I'm not going to be able to love it as much as I want to, because I'm focused on Murderbot Diaries. But I also don't really want to pick up something that I'm not going to like, because then I'm far less likely to just want to read it. But also, I don't want to pick up something that, like, you know, is a book by someone I know and care about, because I want to give those books the best shot available. And basically, I had no idea what the hell to pick up next, and I picked this one up by random, and I am enjoying it. But it's not the Murderbot Diaries, and I'm like, it's still wonderful. Focus on the wonderful. But the important thing is, yeah, this series has dug its way into my heart already. 4 novellas in, I would die for Murderbot. And the next one, Network Effect, is in the mail, so expect my review for it pretty damn soon.